I'm like, I can't really argue against this. I can't just be like, oh, it's just an old book. Like, all of my sort of arguments, there's some merit to, some philosophical thoughts I might have had, but I really had no leg to stand on when it came to the atheistic perspective that I was like hiding, I guess. And so I was convinced by his arguments, and so I started reading the Gospels, or just the Bible in general.
Levi, appreciate you having me. Levi Brooks. So I want to start off with, what's your testimony?
It's a good question. Yeah, I would say I didn't have like a one-time sort of prayer where I was like, I know the day that I was saved. But to take it all the way back to my childhood, my family, I was raised in Tennessee mostly, and my family went to church. Like, I live with just my mom and my brother. So we went to church, and, I kind of remember some moments of that. But then when we moved up to Pennsylvania, we stopped going as much. And I started growing older, and I was very intellectual, I guess. Learning, like to know a lot, like to have a lot of information. And so when I was, probably about 12 to 14, I was attending church with my grandparents, but I would say I was mentally, I was very atheistic. And I had this sort of mentality of like, I'm acting well enough, I'm behaving well enough. Excuse me. I'm behaving well enough that I can get away with people thinking I'm a Christian, and I'm not disappointing the culture around me. While at the same time, looking back at it now, it's very obvious that I wasn't serious, that I wasn't real about my faith, because when I see people that are trying to cover up their lack of faith, I can kind of tell. I feel like the deeper you get into it, the more easy it is to tell. So I wasn't fooling anybody, now that I think about it. But I would attend church. My pastor, Kyle Keener, he was very, very good with the intellectual. He appreciated that I was thoughtful. He appreciated that I was skeptical. And I think that having that was very powerful for me, because it allowed me to, stick around, I guess. It wasn't like I was always facing opposition. It wasn't like I was being told I was an idiot or anything, but it was, I felt appreciated. But at the same time, I still felt like the sort of sneakiness. Like I felt like I was winning, but like I said, I really wasn't fooling anyone. So when I would say probably about 16 years old, I went with that church to a youth conference called Momentum, which it's like a big, 3,000 kids in one place youth conference, whole week long. They're preaching, twice a day, everything like that. And there was an apologist named Sean McDowell who showed up. And you might be familiar with Josh McDowell, his father. And now his son is also making his rounds doing apologetics, Scott McDowell. So it's a whole generation here, 3 generations. But Sean spoke about the reliability of the Gospels as just historical account. And there's a lot of pieces of evidence, a lot of physical pieces of evidence, manuscripts, thousands of manuscript documents, and textual criticism is another piece of the manuscript where you can determine with a high level of accuracy what the earliest documents said, because if there's any differences, we can cross-reference with thousands of other pieces of documentation. So he built a really strong historical case for the gospel. And so I'm sitting there with my, I would say, nihilistic atheist mind, where I didn't think anything really mattered. I just kind of like went through the motions of stuff, which actually caused depression in me subconsciously. I didn't realize it was happening, but that affected me very deeply. And that moment where he was laying out the evidence, I was sitting there, I'm like, I can't really argue against this. I can't just be like, oh, it's just an old book. Like, all of my sort of arguments, there's some merit to, some philosophical thoughts I might have had, but I really had no leg to stand on when it came to the atheistic perspective that I was like hiding, I guess. And so I was convinced by his arguments. And so I started reading the Gospels, or just the Bible in general, with a different sort of perspective. I also really opened up into the Old Testament. I used to be very bored of the Old Testament. I was like, this is just boring, like, verse after verse of this guy did this, this guy did that. Until I realized that it was historical. And I also realized that there's a big message to come out of that. But anyway, all I had to say, over time, reading the Gospels, seeing them as real history, like, oh my gosh, like this is reliable history. Then I became convinced that Christ is Lord, that he died for our sins, and it's unreasonable to believe otherwise in terms of historically. And then God just worked in my heart more and more until I came to a point where, again, I don't have a specific date, but I came to a point where I trusted in Jesus with my life, with my soul. And so I said it very quickly, but it's a long, arduous process of going through that. So I would say I was probably about 16 years old and I really came into the faith. I mean, I was living in it, but I wasn't living it, Yeah.
What was the biggest criticism that you had that you needed to ask someone about that was it Sean McDowell pointed out? Mm-hmm. Was it just like the history of it? The mythological nature of it was very obvious to me. That was something where it's like, oh, you believe in fairy tales if you believe in God, or if you believe in Jesus as a figure or whatever. And there was also this thought that I see a lot of people deal with today, especially the nihilistic side of things, is you just need God to help yourself feel better about life, because you know that life has no meaning, you know that stuff doesn't matter, and that makes you sad. It doesn't make me sad because I'm strong. I'm mentally strong. I have fortitude, and I know everything. I know what I need to know. I know what I need to do, but I really didn't. I just felt that way. And so that was another criticism that I had, was like, well, you just can't handle the truth, so you run to God for comfort. And there are people who do that, which is what we call blind faith, but most people, I don't think, believe that way. And I think I also was very harsh against experiential evidence, where a person who had an experience with God, and it's just like, you probably had psychosis or something like that. Something in your head was just twisted up, and that's why you had that experience. Or somebody was playing music really emotionally, and that's why you had that experience. But having had those experiences now, you can't exactly use them against a very intellectual atheist, but you can use them for yourself. That strengthens your own faith. And to other believers who hear the stories and they trust you, it strengthens their faith as well. So the experiential stuff, I was like, oh, you're just, that's emotionalism. You're just, living in a echo chamber of sorts. But being on the other side of it, it's very much, you can't deny your own subjective experience at times. Yeah, I experienced a lot of, I think what brought me back was not experiential things necessarily, but it was a lot of synchronicities where, and I didn't even know what the word was for it. I just was noticing these things that was way beyond, it was beyond mere chance. Yeah. And little did I know that there was people like Carl Jung, I think it's Carl Jung, writing about that as synchronicities, and now I'm learning about like Christian mysticism and things that I got to be discerning about. But it's like that was what led me in. Did you feel like people who had those experiences, it was all in their head, it was a psychological thing?
Definitely. Give me one sec.
Yeah, I feel like with me, like looking at
in like high school, I remember I went through a phase where I was really into psychology, or what I thought was psychology, and trying to understand the human mind, thinking that everything originated from there, and all of our problems, all those things, which technically maybe all of our problems do originate from there, but just kind of thinking that God originated from there.